Okay, so this is part 2 of the menu setup tutorial. I just want to really show you what happens if you have some moving elements on your screen, because the way we set it up at the moment can cause a couple of problems. So, if we, for example, go to let's look at the button here, and let's just add a move command. So basically, that'd be too much. So let's just set it to 1. So what this will basically do is move every button along by 1 pixel every time the act runs. So if we run it now, you can see now this is on the main page, but the button is moving across. And if I click it, this is the play page with the button moving across. But now if I go back to main, manage to click it, there you go. The button you can see is already halfway across the screen. So it doesn't reset the button back. Now, in theory, this should be relatively simple, you would think. So let's go to our main screen here. Set up a new method called reset. And what we would do here is we would reset the play button's location. Okay, so when would this method run? Well, ideally, before we load the page back up. So if we look back on our button, and look at the code there, when we click on the link, before we set the world to the link, we would want to reset that world. Okay, the issue comes in here, in that it cannot find this method. The reason it can't find it is because the link that we've got is of type world, and the actual world class doesn't contain this reset. So ideally you would then go back to your parent class and you would have this method created there. The problem in Greenfoot is we can't edit this world class, which causes us a slight issue in that we can't correct this mistake. So what we're going to actually do is we're going to create another child class that's going to sit between the world and our screens. So if I create a new subclass to world, and we're going to call this one screen. And every screen that we create, we're going to place within side of this class. So now in the play code, rather than an extending world, it's going to extend screen. And you'll see what will happen here. If you see on the right hand side, the play now has gone as a child of screen, and the screen is a child of world. And we're going to need to do that to all of the screens that we want set up. Okay, so now they're both in there. So what we can do now is, under screen, we can actually then create this method that we want both of them to have. So in this case, the reset method. I don't actually need to set any code in here. All I need, because what's going to happen is the main and the play are going to override this method anyway. I just need to have the method as an option. So the main will have its own version of it, and play will have its own version. So that's the reset for main. And if I go to play, we're also going to add that into play as well. Okay, so if we can compile these now, we're going to have an error here. This is now because in the play class, when it calls super, it's actually going to call back to its parent, which is now screen and not world. And if we look at the screen constructor, it's different. What we're trying to do here is we're trying to pass it 3 parameters, yet our screen constructor doesn't have any parameters. So we're going to need to receive these. So we need to get the width, the height, and the amount of pixels. And rather than us having fixed amount here, we're just going to pass these values. So what's really happening here now is that play passes 800, 601 to screen, which is received now here. And then screen passes those values back up to world. Okay, so all of our values then get passed correctly. Although it's still receiving an error here, I think if we actually compile, it's still not picking up that the constructor's changed. There we go. I just deleted the bracket and put one back in for it to realize that the constructor above it has changed. Now, we're still getting the error here because at the moment, the type of link we're receiving is of type world. Now, rather than receiving a world, we're going to receive a screen. Okay, now you can see this error has been removed because screen has a method called reset. So we don't get any complaints there. And as I said, reset, okay, is empty, but main has its own version, so it overrides it. And play has its own version, so it also overrides it. So what happens now is when we click on the button, it resets all the buttons on the page it's going to load and then loads the page. So we shouldn't have the same issue as before. Oh, we've still got an error here. Okay, so you can see here I've still got an old reference to world, which now becomes screen. And it'll be the same here as well. Okay, yeah, so all of our worlds, our screens now are of a type screen rather than world. Okay, and then that compiled, okay. Right, so let's have a look. So if I run this now, okay, so the button moves. Let's let it get a little way across. We move to the play screen. Now, if you remember last time when I went back to the main screen, the button continued from where it left off, whereas now, when I go back, it goes back to the start again. And the same with the play screen. Okay. This setup also will allow us to have a lot more functionality with the screens, where we could actually have a better inheritance setup, where we could actually create our own kind of custom methods if needed within here. So I think overall this is probably a stronger setup for the menu.